Hello, welcome to Off the Clock. Today we're going to talk about a favorite corporate buzzword, engagement. But we're going to break it down for you, make it very practical, and let you know what you need to know about engagement in your workplace.
Welcome to Off the Clock, the webcast of employment attorneys at Miller Johnson, where we discuss what is happening in the HR world and provide practical insight and advice.
We're so excited to welcome a special guest host, Chrissy Heyne. Chrissy Heyne is a leadership and development coach and expert and is going to talk to us today about engagement, a place she has spent much of her work life working in and around. So when I hear the word engagement, right, that's a buzzword, right? And
Yes.
People think lots of things when they hear that word. When I hear that word, I think an employee's emotional attachment to the place they work, but I'm not sure if that's right.
Yeah.
So what really is engagement?
Yeah. So when I think about engagement, and I would say you're close, I use everything from Gallup. And so if you're not looking at Gallup's website and research, I highly recommend it. But They define employee engagement as the enthusiasm and involvement of the employees within your organization. So both how employees are treated and how they treat one another kind of impact all of the outcomes within your organization.
You said enthusiasm, and what was the second?
Enthusiasm and involvement.
Involvement with each other or with the
work, with each other, with the company, and they have a set of 12 questions that they kind of use to measure that involvement and engagement.
Why is it important? Why is it a buzzword right now? Why is everyone talking about engagement?
So if we kind of zoom way out, only 30% of the American workforce is engaged at work, which means if you have 10 friends, only 3 of them are excited to go to work every day. If you kind of think about your network of friends, that probably resonates.
I think that's
you can probably go
not naming names
through the line. Exactly.
Yeah.
For me, I think the way people feel at work and about their life matters, but it also really affects bottom line. So Gallup compares kind of the top quartile of engaged companies with the bottom quartile, and I have to write some of this down, but there's an 81% decrease in absenteeism, a 58% decrease in safety incidents, a 23% increase in profitability. So it really impacts your company's bottom line. So if you're just kind of doing it even from a selfish perspective, the company wins and the brand wins. But also people are just happier to be at work and feel excited to come and feel excited to connect with their peers and do meaningful work.
So a lot of the folks listening may or may not be HR professionals. So I want to back up to one of those statistics for just a second. 81% decrease in absenteeism.
Yeah, comparing the top quartile of companies to the bottom, right? So these are the most engaged organizations by those 12 Gallup questions to the bottom quartile. So that's significant.
That is extraordinarily significant because, spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about some things to help increase engagement. In our next episode, we're going to be talking about things managers can do. So what's interesting about that statistic is, to me, it sounds like it's an investment, because managers, others might say, wait a minute, this is taking a lot of our time. Right, to talk to you about this, to talk to Chrissy about this, to even listen to this podcast. Right, I've got other things I need to do. But think about how much time managers in HR spend on tracking and reprimanding and all the covering for people when they're absent, all the stuff that comes with high absenteeism.
So and turnover, too. There's a turnover quote statistic, 43% decrease in turnover.
So all the recruiters.
Yes, exactly.
All the HR professionals where one element of their job is recruiting.
Exactly.
41% less.
Yeah, and I don't think I feel like it logically resonates, right? It's like when people feel good about where they work, they contribute more productively to that environment, right? It's culture. And so this is something that isn't extra work, it is the work. And I think that's a mindset shift too of now I have to make my employees feel good about how they work. It's like, you don't have to, but it will fundamentally make them better at their job and make them more engaged in your company. And so I think that's a mindset shift too for leadership and thinking about this as an extra thing we do versus just what we do as we get the work done. And how we get the work done.
I think that's very impactful. I've heard you speak before, but I haven't heard that phrase before. This isn't extra work, it is the work.
Yeah.
That's very impactful.
Yeah, good.
And I will remember that.
Okay, good.
One of the reasons engagement is so important for me and my colleagues right now in the labor and employment world is union organizing. So our clients, anyone that goes to our seminars, anyone that listens to this podcast knows that we've been talking about that quite a bit. Not just Miller Johnson, but pretty much everyone around the country that's in the employment or employment law world or field is aware that union organizing is at an all-time high, well, at least all-time in my professional life. I'm sure it was higher back in the 40s. But in our recent memories, union organizing is at, the organizing efforts are at an all-time high in modern history, and their success rate is also at an all-time high. And the polls show that perceptions of unions are also at an all-time favorable in recent memory. For organizations that would like to stay union-free, the best offense is a defense, right? And Sarah and I have talked about this in another podcast about how to know when people are actually organizing, that sort of thing. It may be too late. The best offense is employee engagement.
Yeah.
Right? When employees feel, give me your definition again, the words.
Involved and enthusiastic.
Involved and enthusiastic with their colleagues and with their organization. They are less likely to be wooed by a union. Because they're already happy.
Exactly.
So that's another ROI, if you will, on engagement work. Specifically in this moment in time. So we highly recommend employers pay attention.
And that's context. I don't, you have a lot more background in that, but as you were speaking, I was thinking about some of the, Gallup has these 12 questions that they use to measure how engaged your staff is.
Tell us about those.
I mean, I think a couple, one of the top ones is I know what is expected of me, and that obviously directly comes from the manager, so we can hit that one in the next episode. But I think some of the things that I would imagine people need a union for, which is protection. I don't feel like my company is looking out for me or will listen to what I need. A lot of those questions are baked in here. My supervisor or someone at work seems to care about me as a person. My opinions seem to matter. In the last 6 months, someone has talked to me about my progress. A lot of that is interpersonal stuff, the soft skills of leadership that are actually really difficult to pull off. And I would imagine if you don't have that at your work, you're probably looking for protection outside of there to kind of advocate for you.
So now that we've convinced people watching or listening that this is important work to be done sooner rather than later, how might they take this information back to other C-suite leaders to talk to them about and get their attention on this?
I think a couple kind of concrete tips. I would definitely go to the Gallup website. Just give it a quick Gallup's Great Places to Work. They do a great overview. I think I would take those 12 questions to my leadership probably and say, how much time and energy realistically do we put into just in our minds, thinking about how our employees feel through this lens? Do we think about whether or not our employees' opinions matter? Do we think about in the last 7 days, have you recognized or praised someone for doing a good job at your work? Do we think that, and really think about how much time you're spending in terms of how you make decisions, how you spend your time, how you interact with your employees, and just start there with kind of a real honest dialogue. And if the answer is, we're not thinking about any of these questions at all, that's super useful information, because I do think that this is a mindset shift for some people in terms of just, they work for us, they need to come to work and do it. That's over. And as the younger generation comes in, a lot of these things they expect, and more companies are offering it, right? So if you're a company that does, law, and you're not doing some of these things, there probably is a law firm somewhere that is. And if I'm coming out of college, that second law firm and how they bake these in even to the interview process is going to communicate a level of how we think about our employees from the jump. So
that feels very personal.
I only use law because of where we are.
Feeling a little insecure. Let's talk about making widgets.
Okay. Fair.
We are doing a lot of engagement work here at Miller Johnson Associates. We are doing a lot of that work here, but that's why Sarah and I always talk about making widgets. Why don't we use examples? So you mentioned there are 12 factors in the Gallup survey. Can you run through the 12?
Yeah.
But then also, I'm just going to speak on behalf of people that might be hearing this for the first time.
Yes, please.
Having read through the 12 when you sent them to me, it feels a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
Because if I'm at a company where this hasn't been a focus already,
Yep.
biting off all of that, right?
Yep.
12 things to focus on and
Yep.
change. I might be paralyzed, right? By I don't even know where to start.
Yep.
This is not going to happen. So I would love to know what the 12 are.
Yep.
And then also like your top ones, right?
Yeah.
For organizations that have not started this work yet,
Yeah.
and they could pick one or two this year, what moves the needle the most out of the 12? But anyway, first go through your 12.
The first, just top one is how satisfied are you with your company as a place to work? So that's kind of the holistic view. But then the rest of the 12 kind of break down into specific things. So I know what is expected of me at work is the first question. I have the materials and equipment I need to do my work right. At work, I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day. Right. So those first three are kind of about the job itself.
Yep.
How clear you are on what you do and how much you like how you're spending your time at work. From there, I think it goes pretty much more into kind of the inner game of kind of the experience. So in the last 7 days, I have received recognition or praise for doing good work.
Can we put 7 days?
Yeah, in the last week.
Wow.
Right. So that means I'm not waiting for my annual review for someone to notice I come to work every day. I leave my home, I leave my family, and I'm contributing something to this company at every level.
I bet a lot of organizations are going to say no to there. A lot of people, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, please.
Okay, go
pause
ahead.
me as much as you
7
need.
days, praise.
My supervisor or someone at work seems to care about me as a person. That one really, I had one manager who did check-ins with me, and when we would get in the check-ins, he just jumped in. And it was so foreign to me because I had never had a manager who didn't say like, how are the kids? And
Right.
how's it coming off maternity leave? Like, how was the marathon? I never ran a marathon. I don't know why I did that example. I have a life outside of
channeling
this.
Sarah.
Yeah, I must have had her.
I don't know if you believe in energy.
Yes, it must have hit me.
Literally channeling Sarah.
So that one's really interesting because I think some people, if you've had it and then you don't, it's shocking. I think some people might have never had it, where they have somebody at work who acknowledges that, you're overwhelmed today because there's no school today, because there's a water thing and you just had a morning that you didn't expect. And just those like micro conversations that feel like nothing.
Yes, the water cooler
are
talk.
huge, and my bias always goes towards those type of skills. It's probably because I'm better at that than giving clear expectations. So, so I probably lean heavily on that, but it's, when people underestimate how powerful that is or throw it away, it really, I'm just like, it's an easy win. It's free.
It's
easy. Free.
It doesn't take a lot
and
of
it
time.
lands so heavily for a lot of people, for most people. That's why and this is all research. These questions didn't come out of someone's brain. They use it. They've used them to define it.
And
So
pausing there too, because after all, I am a lawyer.
Yes,
right?
yes,
and it's
yes.
a law firm that
Yes.
produces this. I think that's a good legal risk management strategy as well. I mean, I have had litigation, been involved in employment litigation, where it was purportedly about something.
Yeah.
Right? Being terminated incorrectly, being discriminated against, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But when we really got deep into a deposition or mediation, it would come down to things like that.
Yeah.
Like the owner or manager.
Yeah.
Not seeing them.
Yes.
Or even in a termination process or meeting, not handling
Yes.
it as if they're dealing with a human being
Yeah. Yeah.
on the other side. I had one case that resolved when the hourly employees got to sit at the mediation table with the owner of the company and explain how hurt this one gentleman in particular was when their father's death was not acknowledged by the owner and felt in that moment like he was being treated as just another right gear in the company's machinery and not like a human being. And then that caused a rift emotionally, maybe unengagement would be And then we ended up where we ended up, you
Yeah.
know, many thousands of dollars and hours later.
And you hear stories like that all the time. And it's, to me, just wild that someone could lose their father as this example and come to work and nobody on their team or their manager says, hey, let me know what you need in the next few weeks. Obviously, you know, that's so simple. And they might not need anything and they might need something, but ignoring it, you for sure are losing that person. And why would I continue to give all of me to a company for a paycheck? I mean, this is the cycle we're trying to get out of, right? We want it to feel like an engaged experience. One of our core needs as humans is belonging. And this, to me, this idea that someone at work cares about me as a person hits that core need. And again, this doesn't mean we need to go into our, people are like, oh, I already hear somebody listening to this podcast.
Too much information.
You know,
I don't want to
I'm not someone who wants to talk about my home life. Okay, like no one's making you. There's a lot of ways to do this, right? It could be something as simple as, you know, hey, there's a no school day today. I realize that might mean a crazy morning for you. How you doing? Do you need to start 5 minutes late? It's these little things that we're just kind of observing as a human being. Right. Some of us do this really naturally. Right. Others of us not. Yeah. The most important thing is knowing where you fall on this spectrum and knowing that if your primary objective is engaged employees, you need to move further along the spectrum, right? So it's not from a judgmental place. It's from an awareness place of like, yeah, this is probably something I'm not going to do very naturally. Right. How can I hold myself accountable? How can I tell my people, hey, I have a propensity to just jump into the work. Yeah. That's not personal to you. I'm trying to get better at it. We can narrate all of these things as leaders to kind of model, quite frankly, self-awareness and model the things we're trying to get good at. But the bottom line is kind of, again, moving further along that spectrum.
We could go way off on that topic and maybe we'll get onto it. Because I want to keep talking about it because I love what you just said about know your strengths. And you don't have to be perfect. Just move one notch. Yeah. Just one notch. Yeah. Right? And let's not expect the world, right, of everyone. Yes. Because no manager is everything to everyone. Let's be honest.
And that goes to these 12 questions. It's like, you're going to hear these 12 questions and there's going to be some that you're like, ew, I'm not great at that, you know? And that's fine. And there's going to be some where you're like, oh, I'm actually good at that. And I could be doing it a lot more. I mean, I always say a lot of things on this list are free. You know, praise is free. Yeah. Why would you go more than 7 days to give someone praise? It's a free thing you can do that really makes a significant impact and doesn't take a lot of time. Right. You know, so.
Okay. What number did I stop?
I couldn't tell you, but I'm going to keep going.
You and I both like to talk.
I know.
So we're gonna challenge ourselves.
Card since kindergarten. Yeah. There is
Oprah's too, by the way.
Yeah,
look
exactly.
What became of her. Okay.
There's someone at work who encourages my development. At work, my opinions seem to count. The mission or purpose of my company makes me feel like my job is important. My associates or fellow employees are committed to doing quality work. So this kind of speaks to engagement, that one, of the whole team. Yeah. I have a best friend at work. That one's controversial. We can come back to it if you want.
I kind of want to stop, but we won't. We got to get through it. Okay, and we're going to come back to it. I don't understand.
In the last 6 months, someone at work has talked to me about my progress. This last year, I have opportunities to learn and grow.
Okay, let's talk about the best friend one. Okay. I don't want to go off for the rest of the episode, but what do you mean my best? Read that one again.
I have a best friend at work.
I have a best friend. So it doesn't have to be my best friend. Yep. It doesn't have to be your only best friend. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, and that's just how it's phrased.
I'm like, you want me to dump my best
friend? Yeah, no.
Child you can have to work here?
Yeah, so
I don't have to break up with her, do I, as my best friend?
You have to wear a necklace, so that's part of it. But the company that I worked for pretty much my entire professional career used Gallup, used the 12 questions. We did it as a leadership team, you know. And this question, people spent so much, and I always mark yes. I have always had really close friends at work. Okay.
So it can be a close friend.
That's how I read it, right? And I think some people get hung up on, and it's so funny because
the best is
it's really triggering to people.
It is.
Yes.
Not everyone's the best. There's only one best.
Yes. And it's so funny because, yeah, and maybe that's it. It's like,
you give me that word.
People get traded. But when I hear people when I would be at these tables and people are like, this question bothers me. And I'd be like, I know that you have a best friend at work. I know that you and you talk outside of work, So I think the gist is it goes back to that relational place. It goes back to this, I don't just go to a place where I punch in and punch out and it's transactional. I've cultivated real deep and meaningful friendships at work. Now, that might not be on your team. That might be laterally. That might be up and down. That might be, I think the spirit behind it, I'm probably not someone who's technically dissecting language in this way. But I think the spirit behind it is, have you cultivated real and meaningful relationships with the people for whom you go to? Because if you are,
that I can live
you
with.
Are likely more, right, seems like,
I want to dump my best friend.
Yes, it seems like you and Sarah have a meaningful relationship at work that isn't just transactional. You obviously have created this podcast that was probably born not so much out of work, but out of like, hey, this is someone who I wouldn't mind doing this extra project with. So you can tell there's kind of, it's broken down by, kind of, do you have some purpose at work? Are you developed at work? Do you have caring manager and people within your team? Do you have ongoing conversations about your development? And, are you able to leverage your strengths and do what you do best every day at work? And that's a tall order to your point.
So back to organizations where this is new.
Yes.
And people are listening to this.
Yeah.
And thinking, I'd really like to move the needle somewhat this year, right? I'm not going to be over ambitious here because I know my organization, the resources we have, and the personalities. What are the few things that can move the needle the most with maybe even the least amount of energy? Can I even say that? Where's the most bang for the buck, do you think?
So I think, this might not be the best, most perfect answer, but I think part of this, there is a way to get insight into where you're already doing things well and where you're not. And that would be by giving this survey to your staff, right? So the answer to this question will probably be different depending on your organization and the culture and the things you're already doing and the things you're not doing. So it might not be like...
So measure first.
I think that's like probably the best answer, and I think in terms of where to start, it might be like, to look at these 12 questions and think about where are the places where you could get some easy wins, where you're saying to yourself, like, gosh, I haven't praised anyone in 7 days. I'm just not someone who tends to look for where things are going well. And like, can you create some systems where you bake in some opportunities to acknowledge? Can you do some things at the beginning of your check-ins with employees that actually acknowledges, hey, you came to work today, but you're also a person, and you can maybe build in small talk. There's a lot of really interesting research on small talk and how important it is. And so it's like little things like that I think our brain tells us isn't important. And that's either our bias or just us maybe getting pulled into the bottom line.
Yeah, the productivity mode. Must be productive all the time.
Skipping over the human experience part of it. So.
Chrissy, I'm so happy to hear that because I love small talk. I've always loved it.
Yeah.
I am definitely the one. I could just stand by the water cooler all day and chit-chat with everyone that comes by. Yeah. And that would be a perfect day for me.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's like my perfect day. Yeah. So that makes me so happy. Yeah. There are some things on that list I know are weak points. When you said them, I cringed a little inside. I'm not sure if it'll show on camera. Yeah. Hopefully the camera was just... I shrunk a little bit because I'm like, ooh, I am not doing those things. Yeah. So that just makes me so happy. Yeah. So we're gonna stick around. Let's listen to 2 episodes. Great. But I do want you to stick around because I want to talk next about strategic ways to actually move the needle. Right. So we talked about how to pick which elements to focus on, but next time we're going to focus on managers. Spoiler alert, right? It's managers
major lover to
that
this.
Have so much control over this. But I just want to circle back real quickly to something we talked about towards the beginning, which is how to get other leaders' attention on this. I promise this is not just self-interest and self-promotion.
Yeah, no.
You might want to have listeners might want to have others just listen to this podcast. It's 20 minutes.
Yes.
It's a podcast, not just a web thing. I actually prefer the podcast because then I don't have to worry about people looking at me, which I hate. I just closed my eyes when I said it. If my eyes are closed, no one can see me.
Exactly.
Anyway, just have people listen to it on their way to or from work.
Yeah.
One day.
Yes.
Right? And hopefully they'll feel the enthusiasm, hear the real business ROI on it, and then be on the same page with our more frequent listeners, right? That this is something that can happen in 2020.
Yeah, I think it could be a great starting point for a conversation, even just to think about these 12 questions and how much time and energy your organization is giving to thinking about them would be a great starting point.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We're going to take a break.
Yeah, thanks for having me.